In this episode of the podcast, we have a very special interview. Welcome to the How to Get on Reality TV podcast with Dan Giesling, where I answer your reality TV casting questions once a week. Hey everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the How to Get on Reality TV podcast. My name is Dan Giesling. I'm very excited to bring you a different type of podcast today. It's rare that we do these. This is the first time we've done one since we've moved to the new format, but given the fact it is casting season in Canada, and we got someone that has been a part of the community that started from zero and eventually had success and made it on the show of his dreams. But before we get into that, I do want to let you guys know that it all started for this person with the email list, and that was one of our first interactions. So if you haven't joined the email list that I send out every Tuesday, you want to check that out. It notifies you about the podcast and any additional tips and links and things that aren't here that you'll find on the audio version. You can sign up for it at howtogetonrealitytv.net/ask, and that's howtogetonrealitytv.net/ask. So we're going to go ahead and lead in to this special episode. Our guest today is someone that recently just got off the third season of Big Brother Canada. He's someone that started out as a community member, and I don't want to ruin his whole story, but he was able to work through some issues and find his way through the casting process, and I'm not doing him any justice because we just got he does such a good job with the interview and sharing. There's so many points and tips that he shares throughout his journey, some that I don't even think he realized he was sharing, but it's a great interview, and I hope you guys enjoy it. This interview with Jordan Parhar from Big Brother Canada Season 3. Enjoy. All right, so I'm very excited to have a special edition of the podcast. We're deviating from the normal segments where you guys ask a question because we have one of you guys who were a fellow listener of the podcast on the show that's had some success. So it's my pleasure to introduce Jordan Parhar, a recent house guest on Big Brother Canada Season 3. Jordan, thanks so much for coming out, man. I appreciate it.
Dan, thank you so much for having me on the show. I am such a huge fan of yours. This is an honor. It's a pleasure. And I can't believe this is surreal for me, the fact that I'm talking to you right now. So thank you so much. I can't wait to get into this.
Dude, it's my pleasure. You're kind of, I guess you could call yourself the poster boy of how to get on reality TV. Now, you're someone that's gone through the whole process. And we're going to talk about that. But, when you sent me that email, it just, and when you sent me the email saying, hey, thanks for everything, of course, prior to that, when the cast was released for your season, I can kind of look at a cast and be like, okay, this person, was recruited. This person probably applied. So I went through and looked up your name, and I saw we had a bunch of interactions. I was excited because I knew that you got on the show, and I knew how much passion there was for you to get on the show. But before we get into that, I want to talk. So this whole podcast isn't going to be a question and answer. It's going to be about your casting journey. So I want to go back to the early days of a young Jordan. When did you know you wanted to be on reality TV, and can you kind of tell me your first thoughts of that and how everything got started?
Yeah, well, I think for me, it started like with most people that got into Big Brother and Survivor very early on, was with Survivor Season 1. I was 7 years old. My family got into it in 2000. I was super into it, and I didn't really understand a lot of what was going on at the time, but I thought, wow, this is really cool. And then I started watching Big Brother more and more. And when I was watching the show as a kid, I never really could see myself being on the show, but it was actually in Big Brother 8 when Eric Stein made it onto the show, America's Player, for those of you who don't remember. He was kind of he was a smaller guy. He was kind of, a little bit quirky and a bit of a more nerdy guy, and he wasn't the type of typical person you would see on reality television. And that was kind of when I thought, wow, there's a guy like me who is on this show. I could totally do this. And from that age, I thought, I want to get on Big Brother someday. However, at that time, there was no Big Brother Canada, so I couldn't apply to be on the show. Luckily for me, 2013, they announced the show, and I thought, okay, this is great. I'm going to go for it, and that's pretty much how I started. And I've been applying. I applied every single season before I got on the show. I applied for the Amazing Race Canada as well, so it was a big dream of mine, and it was so incredible, the fact that it finally came true for me. I'm just so grateful, and it was awesome.
That's awesome to hear. And I want to rewind. So you said age 7. I mean, that's like, so when you saw that as a kid, you're like, I have to be a part of that. Like, can you explain, like, from age 7 to you're 20 now or you're 19 now?
No, actually, I'm 21.
21.
22,
Okay.
22 in a few weeks, actually. Yeah.
So you're 20. So you got on the show. You got on Big Brother, and you're 21 then, right?
Yep.
So from 7 to 21, I mean, that's a significant amount of time. What did you do during that time? I mean, maybe not in grade school, but like after that to start to like figure out how to even begin and get cast.
Well, for me, yeah, I when I was really young, like when I was younger, yeah, when I was in grade school, and when I was started high school and that kind of stuff, I thought, okay, well, this is a dream of mine, but I don't really need to worry about this yet because I'm too young. But I would just watch old seasons and stuff like that. I would read. There was message boards and stuff with information on how to get cast. And anytime I would see that, I would just think to myself, "Oh, wow, this is crazy. This is great information." And then actually, it was, I believe, in the spring of 2012, Dan, you yourself made an appearance on Rob Has a Podcast talking about your new website, how to get on realitytv.net. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. There's one huge resource for all this stuff. And you talked about your book and everything. So from there, this was even before Big Brother Canada was announced, I just figured, okay, wow, this is a great opportunity. I can get all of this information. So I just really studied the hell out of your stuff and everything, and I tried to learn from it, and that's what I did to eventually get cast on reality television. Now, it took me multiple tries like it took for you, but eventually it worked out. So yeah, without you, my friend, I would not have been on reality television, so thank you very much.
Hey, I wish I could take all the credit. I can't. I mean, you did all the hard work, but this is exactly why I wanted to have you on, because you're someone that started from the beginning. And then you've gone through the whole process, and you talk about Rob Cesternino. It's a good dude, and it has a great podcast. We're going to talk about your role in that and towards the end of the podcast. But I have a little Dan and Jordan timeline that I kind of put together. Because this is, and I probably found out like a week or so after you got off the show, but this is not our first time talking face to face. I saw something on Instagram you posted, and it was like, we had like, I was doing some like video chat, and we talked. I'm like, that's so crazy. So then I did a little more homework, and I found out that on July 13th, 2012, you first signed up for the email list. And then, okay, I'm like, okay, that's Jordan and I's, I guess, first technical interaction. And the second one was you signed up for the video boot camp on February 15th, 2013. So about 6 or so months went by. And then you were actually in the pilot program for the boot camp. You were in the live one, correct?
Yes, I was.
So like when that was going on, because that was, that was like the inaugural class of like I opened a school. That was like the first freshman class to go through. Do you remember, even though there was no Big Brother Canada at that time, like why did you still go through it?
Well, actually, what happened was there was the Amazing Race Canada was coming up, and I believe Big Brother Canada, maybe I have my timeline wrong. I think that it was Big Brother Canada season 1 was just about to start.
Okay.
So for me, I thought, okay, well, I applied, I didn't get on the show. I need to do anything and everything I can to get an advantage over everybody else that's trying out for this show. So signing up for your boot camp and gaining some knowledge for the future season, I figured would help me out a lot. I was, again, like you've suggested several times, if you really, really want to get on reality television, it's a pretty good idea to try out for other shows so that way you get some experience beforehand. So at the time, I was actually in the audition process for the Amazing Race Canada with one of my best friends, and so I decided, hey, why not go through the boot camp? This will probably help us for interviews, that kind of stuff. And it really did. We actually made it pretty deep in the process. We didn't ultimately get on the show, but it was a great resource. And I used everything that you taught me to help me moving forward in my casting journey. And that was essential in me getting cast on the show.
That's awesome. Thanks for the fact check too. So you had already applied for Big Brother Canada 1 and got shot down, and then you're like, okay, let me go in the boot camp. So tell me, when you went in, I guess we'll call it going in cold or going in blind to Big Brother Canada, the first season interview, how did that go? Like, what did you do, and what was that like, and what kind of knowledge did you have behind you going into the very first time?
So going into the first time, I didn't have a ton of knowledge yet. I had listened to some of your interviews and stuff with you talking about it, but you were playing Big Brother 14 as the audition process was happening. So there wasn't a ton of stuff that I had gotten yet. I hadn't read your book yet. There was a few things. So I was a little bit playing behind the eight ball. And what I did was I just thought, well, everybody says be yourself. So I'm going to go out there and be myself. So I did hear your advice in which you said make a video. So I made a video. I didn't go to an open casting call. And my video
Plus one for that, by the way.
There we go. So I made a video, and basically, and one of your tips actually that I read was that you need to have lots of energy, because when you're on camera, if you're talking normally, like, hey, what's up? I'm Jordan. This is how I would normally talk, but that doesn't really translate well to being on camera. Well, what I did was I took your advice, but I took it to the extreme. So I was like screaming like Chef Joe Arvin from Big Brother 14 in my video. And basically it was just me screaming, and it wasn't a lot of me telling my story, which was something that was really lacking. And I didn't approach it as if I was going to be a character on the show. And I think that that's something that people should probably think of when they do apply to be on a reality television show, is think of how you fit into a certain character archetype that normally you would see being cast on the show. For me, I walk around like this every day in my normal life. I don't wear glasses. I'm just a regular looking dude, but that didn't really make me stand out. So going forward, I decided, well, I need to accentuate my personality in some fashion. I heard your interview with Ian Terry on this exact podcast, in which Ian said that he wore glasses in his interview to make himself look smarter. And I actually have prescription glasses, unlike Ian. So I figured, hey, I'm a huge fan of this show. When I talk about Big Brother, even though I'm not a very smart guy, as you would have seen on the show, I actually sound somewhat intelligent because I have a huge fan of the show, and people automatically just thought in casting, whoa, this guy's really smart because he's wearing glasses. And that really helped me out going forward in season 2 and season 3.
See, I'd push against you saying that you're not highly intelligent. For someone like you or I to get on that isn't like a recruit or isn't like a bodybuilder or isn't like, it takes a large amount of, whether it's social intelligence or understanding how to fit in. Like it's not an IQ intelligence, but it's like a spatial or social intelligence that you clearly have. But so I want to retrack a little bit. You said, so you brought the energy, so you had the energy. Your story wasn't there the first time. Do you remember what you pitched yourself as the first time around?
The first time around, honestly, there wasn't really much of a pitch. Now that I think about it, it was more so I'm just gonna backstab everyone, and I'm a total ladies' man, even though I'm not at all. And I was sort of like making fun of myself in the video, but it was really and it showed me playing sports and stuff like that. But it was not really. I think something that you need to think about when making your audition tape, or if you are going to an open casting call, is you need to talk about the best parts of you, not just generalizations and things that you're average at. So for me, I am definitely not a ladies' man. I made fun of myself about being a ladies' man later in the casting process as I advanced, but something like me playing sports, I like to play hockey, I like to play touch football, stuff like that, and joke around, mess around, but I'm not a superstar athlete or anything like that. So that didn't really have anything to do with my story, because I'm not Jordan Parhar, the pro hockey player, or Jordan Parhar, the pro flag football player. No, I'm none of those things. Now, if I was going to talk about Jordan Parhar being expert video game player, then yes, that's something that is something more up my alley, and that's something that I used to boost my own standing in the casting process, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. So you went in the first time, you sent in a video, you had a lot of energy, you didn't really have a story, so you send that off and you don't hear anything back. Did you get a semifinal call or anything?
No, I got nothing. Nada.
Okay. And we have to put ourselves in like a historical time right now, is that when Big Brother Canada season 1 came out, it was like open the Hoover Dam of people who've been waiting for so long to get cast on Big Brother who never had the chance to. So like, I'd imagine, you were up against probably the most difficult field of casting definitely in recent history, because even Big Brother US now, or Survivor, there's been so many opportunities. Like, this was your first shot, and so maybe it probably worked out better for you that it didn't happen. But anyway, so you don't get on, and then in between Big Brother 1 and then Big Brother Canada season 2, is that when you did the Amazing Race?
Yeah,
okay.
So I decided I'm a big fan of reality television in general. I figured, hey, I know some stuff about the Amazing Race. There's the Amazing Race Canada coming out. Why not just get together with my buddy on a weekend, make a video, see what happens, take some of the advice from your book and see what happens. And sure enough, what happened was my friend and I made a tape, and we got a semifinal call, and that gave me a lot of experience before I went into Big Brother Canada 2's auditions, because I had the chance to have a semifinal interview, see what that's like, talk to somebody in casting, get those, nerves and jitters out of my system for that time when it didn't really matter as much to me. So that way, when I went to Big Brother Canada season 2 tryouts, I would have that experience when I really, really cared about it. So,
all right. So let me ask you about this. So you put together this tape in this weekend. Is it safe to assume that, if you were to rank the two shows, you'd rather be on Big Brother than The Amazing Race?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
So you sent in a video, did you get a call or an email?
So I actually got an email at first, and then their casting process was a little different, but I got an email, and then a few days later I got a phone call.
Well, tell me about that, because so you got an email, and what did the email say from Canada Amazing Race?
So the email basically just went into I'm trying to remember. I think it was just saying like, "Hey, Jordan, Ryan, we liked your tape. Here's this. We don't know right now where you guys stand." They didn't necessarily say, "Okay, you're going to make semifinals," but they said, "Here's this questionnaire. Fill this out. Send it back to us, and then we'll be in touch." So we got together, we filled it out, and then a couple days later they called us back. So I don't know if that was a formality. I don't understand what exactly the deal was with that, but basically what happened was, they saw the questionnaire and stuff that we did. It was a huge stack of paperwork, and then they called us back, and we were invited for a semifinal interview.
Okay, at that point when you're filling out the paperwork, you got the email. Like, are you excited? Are you like, I don't know what this is? Or are you like fired up?
Yeah. Oh, I was so fired up, because this was finally because I really, really wanted to make an impact on casting in Big Brother Canada 1.
Age 7, we're talking age 7.
Exactly, right? And so this was the first sign that, hey, I actually might be decent at this. I might have a chance of getting on here. So that was just verification that I was, okay, I'm doing something right here. Finally, I'm following the right steps, and this might work. So yeah, I was super excited, and I had your book at that point. So I'd read some stuff on how to approach the questionnaire and all that and everything. So that really helped me out. And yeah, we made it to the next round, and I was just, my heart was racing. I was just so happy. It was awesome. I actually remember, I think it was like 9 a.m. I had school, and I was late for school, and I woke up and I saw that email, and my heart was just beating, and I was just like, oh my God, I was just so happy. It was just a great moment.
Well, we laugh about it, but that is like, it's really important. It's like a stamp of like approval, saying like, look, before you haven't heard anything at all, and now it's like, it gave you like a crack in the door. And it sounds like for you, it gave you a tremendous amount of confidence, at least that, like you said, like you're on the right track. All right. So you get this email, you're fired up, you can't sit still in school. What was roughly the time frame from your email until like the phone call, or when you knew the interview was going to happen?
So we got the email. I think that was like on a Tuesday maybe, and then I think I got the phone call on a Friday, and the interview was 2 weeks from that phone call. So I had a little bit of time beforehand to prep with my friend, and we went over and then again at the end of How to Get on Reality TV, the complete step-by-step guide, there's a list of frequently asked questions for semifinal interviews. So we went through all those.
You sound like me trying to pitch the product.
No, but it's straight up like, Dan, that's I mean, I read all your stuff. It worked. It helped me. So, and I'm not lying to you. Like, that is what I used. And ultimately, we didn't get cast on that season, but that was a great resource that really helped me. And if you are listening to this and you do happen to get a semifinal callback, that's a really good list of questions to prepare for beforehand. It's huge. So,
so let me ask this. So you have this 2 weeks, like, you're clearly dialed in, you're fired up. Your friend, who we don't know, like, was he as on board as you, or did you have to pull him along, or was he
I really had to pull him along. He was more so, he's my best friend, so he was just like, oh yeah, this is cool, but he was not as hardcore eat, live, breathe getting on reality television. He was more so just like, oh, this is fun, and that's it. So I said, hey, like, Ryan, we really have to study for this. We have all these questions we have to go over. And he's like, I got stuff to do. I'm going bowling tonight. How about, he said, we'll do it in a couple days. And I'd be like, no, like, we really need to practice. And ultimately we finally did the night before, but we didn't prepare as much as I would have liked to, but ultimately we did. And what we actually did, Dan, was something that I don't think I've ever heard anybody say them doing this before, but I would definitely suggest this to people. If you do have this list of frequently asked questions, set up a camera and have one person ask the questions to you, or just read the questions off of your notes on your phone or whatever it is, and just look at the camera, talk to the camera, and answer those questions out loud as if you were in the interview right then and there. That way, when you do go to the interview and you do get asked those questions, you say to yourself, okay, well, this is fine. I've already done this before, and it makes you feel a lot more relaxed when it comes time to actually answering those questions, because you've prepared them before and you don't sound like an idiot when you do finally get that opportunity.
That's a great point. I was writing that down. I'm like, man, the student has become the teacher here. That's good. That's a great tip. But I mean, I think what you talked about there is like the difference between someone who kind of wants to be on a reality TV show and someone who, like, this is like, you're focused on this. Like, you're like, all right, we got to do this. And your friend's like, I'm sure he wasn't like fighting tooth and nail, but it just wasn't as important to him. And I think that's definitely, like, regardless of the guide and the all the stuff that you've done, I mean, there's something to be said that for your desire to get on the show and the fact that, like, it's that much more important to you than someone else. And I think ultimately when the chips are all set, like, that type of passion clearly propelled you to get on some show, whether it's Big Brother, Amazing Race. And I think that's awesome to see, like, that you've, even though we're only like a quarter through your story, but the fact that you started from nothing and then all of a sudden, like, you end up there. I think it's awesome, and it fires me up. No,
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay, so you guys had your semifinal interview. Was it phone call? Was it Skype? Was it in person? How did that?
Yeah, it was in person. It was in downtown Vancouver, and it was just between myself, or it was the two of us, and just with a casting producer, and just your typical semifinal interview. You're in a hotel room. There's bright lights. There's a camera. That sort of deal.
Cool. And you're from Cloverdale, correct?
Yes, that is right.
I did a little
research.
I did a little research. You posted a comment on one of the posts back in like 2012. It says Jordan, Cloverdale, VC. I'm like, all right.
That's awesome.
So you go into this. So this is your first ever semifinal interview. You go in, like, tell me what the night before was like, and then when you guys drove together, what was that like?
I couldn't sleep the night before. I was just so excited and so nervous, and it was tough, but I think I probably got, and that's something that's why I think it's a good idea to apply to other shows and get some semifinal experience beforehand. So that way, when you go to your actual show that you care about semifinal interview, you're not sleep deprived, because I think I only had maybe 3 or 4 hours of sleep the night before. We got up super early to go to the interview. I think where our interview was at, it was on a, I think the interview was on like a Sunday, and I think it was at 8 a.m. So we wanted to get there early. So I think I left my house around like 5:30 or 6. And I was just like super pumped up, super scared, but excited at the same time.
And we got to remember, this is for a show that isn't necessarily your 1A tier, like you're dying to be on the show, but you still like felt that way. And I think that's relatable, because when you're essentially an interview or two away from being on a reality TV show. I think a lot of people are going to feel that way. So you're feeling nervous, you go in, like, tell me about like walking into the room and the waiting room, and then when they call you, walk us through that, how that went.
So I walked into the waiting room, I remember, and I actually saw we were just in the hotel lobby, and there were 2 girls there as well. And I looked at my friend and I said, oh, that's our competition right there. We're gonna wreck these guys. So I just was immediately, I thought, okay, and this is another tip of yours, is to look at the people in the waiting room and take some mental notes, and then when you go into the actual interview, rip them to shreds. And what actually ended up happening was they were actually production assistants, and they came and escorted us to our interview. Ultimately, they're like, "Oh, are you Jordan and Ryan? Oh, yeah. Welcome to your interview." I was like, "Oh, wow, I feel like such an idiot now." I was just over gaming it so much and just like overanalyzing everything and just being like an insane person. I had a little too much caffeine that morning. Yeah, and then they took us up an elevator to the interview, and I was just, my heart was racing and I was super scared, and they escorted us to this room, sat us down on this couch. The casting producer was there, and before we knew it, we got into the interview, and my heart was just racing. I was just so scared and nervous at the same time, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, how am I going to get through this interview?" And I had no idea what to expect, but I was super excited at the same time.
Is there anything you remember about the actual interview, like whether something you did well on or something you stumbled on? What's like memorable about that, the questioning portion of that?
Yeah. The interview itself actually went pretty well, because of the preparation that we did, and a lot of the questions were tailored to the things that we studied. And what I actually did in the interview, and I would suggest this to anybody who is auditioning to be on The Amazing Race, is we fought a lot in our interview. My best friend and I made a lot of fun of him. I was like, jabbing at him and, making jokes and saying he's fat and things like that. And he would get mad at me and yell at me and tell me I'm a puny little nerdy and he was going to kick my ass and stuff like that. Because on The Amazing Race, they cast people on the show that are going to fight. And this is something that I knew beforehand, that they're going to be looking for that. So that's what we did in the interview. It went pretty well. There was a few moments when my friend stumbled like a little bit, not too much, but I could tell that we did well, but not well enough to ultimately get on the show. We actually made it through. They kept us in the process for a little bit longer. I think the finals were starting in the beginning of April, and I believe they cut us in like one of the last days of March. So we were, I think, the last week of March actually. So we were actually somewhat close to actually making it to the next round, but ultimately we didn't.
So when you talk about like the playful jabbing back and forth, did you feel like, was that like natural, or was that like, did you guys talk about it ahead of time?
Yeah, that actually was something that we talked about a little bit ahead of time, but it actually was pretty natural because we've been best friends since we were 5 years old, so we know each other really well, and it was sort of as if we kind of approached it as if we were just hanging out with friends, talking, drinking at a bar, and just making fun of each other, because that's what best friends do. And that's something that I feel like would give people applying to be on The Amazing Race a very huge advantage if they know each other beforehand, or they have a really strong relationship going into applying to be on the show. If you apply to go on the show with a coworker that you barely know, it's a little bit harder than if you're applying to go on the show with a sibling or a parent or a cousin or a very close friend, something like that, because you have this instant chemistry just like that. You don't really need to worry about, oh, okay, well, I'm going to say this here and you say this here. No, it just comes naturally, and I think that's something that they're looking for.
So what you're telling me is the reason you didn't get cast on Amazing Race is not because of you, it's because your buddy Ryan blew the whole thing. I'm just joking.
Well, I think, and also too, I mean, I was nervous. There was a few times. I mean, I'm not going to blame it all on him.
No, I'm just joking.
He did well, but no, it's the first interview's tough, Dan, and you've met again something you said. It's really, really rare to apply for a show and make it on the first try, because that semifinal interview and those future interviews after that are really tough if you've never done them before. And we didn't get frozen in the interview, but there were a few times where we were just like, I didn't know what to say for a second, and then went and started talking. So yeah, it was tough, but it was a really great learning experience for me, because I took a lot of that knowledge I learned from what a semifinal interview is like, and I took that with me to the next season when I applied for Big Brother Canada 2.
So let's talk about like the rejection and how that went. So you left the interview. You said you're feeling like okay, like you didn't feel like you knocked it out of the park, but you're like, you probably knew it wasn't going to happen. Is that how you felt?
I think a little bit better than that at the time. We were kind of coming off a high. I think we didn't have a ton of self-awareness at the time. But after doing many interviews now for a reality TV show, I do know. I know. Okay, yeah, it wasn't really that great. But at the time, I was like, oh yeah, we were so great. This was awesome. But In reality, not so great.
Okay, so how did you find out? How did the bomb get dropped that you weren't going to be moved to finals?
So I actually, again, the school theme. I was waiting to start a class. I think I was like eating lunch at school, and I was on my laptop, and I got a phone call, and I saw the area code, and I knew, okay, this is it. This is it. This is either going to be the call saying we're going to the next round, or we're going to get cut. And I was super nervous, and my heart was just racing, just as it is every time when you get one of those calls.
Yeah.
And I picked it up, and I answered the phone call, and the lady on the other end, she was like, "Hey, Jordan, we loved you and Ryan so much. You guys are great. You're awesome. But sorry, not going to make it this year. Please, though, apply next year. I really want you to apply next year, but yeah, it's not going to work this year." So for me, I was really crushed and I was devastated. But at the same time, I was happy because, one, Amazing Race Canada wasn't really the show that I wanted to get on. It was Big Brother. And I was a little bit scared, actually, that, oh, crap, what happens if I make it far in the process and I actually get on the show and then I can't go on Big Brother? That would suck. Mm-hmm. So I was actually, at first I was a little bit disappointed. That first, 48 hours was a little tough. But I got over it, and I was glad that I was able to take something from the experience. And she mentioned a positive. She said, "Please apply to be on the show next year." Now, I don't know if that's something that she says to everyone, and that was kind of in the back of my mind. But the fact that she didn't say, "Hey, you suck, never apply again,"
yeah.
That kind of made me feel like, okay, well, at least it's positive here. I did something somewhat right here. Hopefully I can take what I learned from this experience and use it with me going forward. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. I think anytime like someone like yourself, you made it to the semifinals in Amazing Race Canada, well, like you don't suck at anything. Like they see something in you, and I think sometimes it's a matter of whether or not you deliver on that. Sometimes it's a matter of how do you fit into the cast. Sometimes it's a matter of is there another guy from Vancouver with his best buddy that may look almost identical to you. That there's so many things, but I think that's awesome that you had at least after your 48 hours of mourning, you had enough awareness to be like, okay, look, I'm not dead in the water. Like I still have some life, and you can do that because if you say that call shattered you, you never would have made it on, season 3. There'd be bagels would have a totally different meaning to you.
Oh, they would, Dan. My life would not be the same. I wouldn't be as fulfilled as I currently am. But yeah, the way I approached it was always reload, and that's something in your book. Always reload. Keep getting new information. Think about where you went wrong and change that the next time you apply, and hopefully that'll help you moving forward.
Okay, awesome. So speaking of the next time you applied, so next up when reloading is Big Brother Season 2 for you, correct? Okay.
Yes.
Tell me that, because I don't know that story from you yet. I knew your Amazing Race story. Yeah. I knew your Season 3 story. What happened in Season 2?
Okay, so Season 2. So I had the entire summer to prepare for this audition, and I knew it was coming. I watched Big Brother Canada 1. It got renewed, and I said, score. Okay, awesome. This is my time. Now I can get on the show now that I have some experience in casting. And what I did was, again, read your book. I had done the video boot camp. I went over all of the videos and stuff like that again. I just tried to take in as much information as possible.
Let me hold you there. So how did you craft your story differently than the first time you applied for Big Brother?
So what I did this time was I actually got out a notebook and I got out a pen and paper, and I just wrote down the top of the page my character, and then I just wrote Jordan, and I just underneath that listed all of the traits that I wanted to present to casting in the casting process. And I wanted to, because the problem the previous time, and I realized that at this point was I didn't really have a story. I needed to craft some sort of story for myself that could help me get cast on the show. And one of the things that I learned from you, again, this is just a love letter to Dan Giesling, this episode of the podcast. But the thing that I did was that I honestly, okay. Now
so you have this list of traits. Like, how did you even begin to fill that out?
So sorry. It was the weird list, actually, that you came. There was this thing just that you had this YouTube video you did, this webinar. Come up with your weird list all these things that are weird about you. So I listed all of those things. I also took one of your notes, or took a note of something you said one time, and that was rattle some cages. Don't be afraid to say something that is controversial, because the object of everything you say in casting should create a reaction in some way, whether that's positive or negative. So I tried to come up with traits for the Jordan character that I was going to portray throughout casting that are part of me that would rattle some cages. So I just wrote down that I didn't like old people and stuff like that, which is not true necessarily, but I figured like part of me, there's a little part of me with a lot of those traits where I felt like, I sort of feel like this a little bit. I'm just going to amplify this 100%, and I'm going to use that moving forward. Another thing I actually learned from Rob Sesternino, as well as I actually had a one-on-one call with him after I didn't get cast on Big Brother Canada 1, asking him for some tips. And one of the things that he told me was a tip from Lynn Spillman, who is the casting director of Survivor, and that is that Survivor and Big Brother, these shows, they're always looking for a casting triangle. And that triangle consists of three things: sex, humor, and conflict. And you need to appeal to those three things as much as you can throughout the casting process. And that's something that I did, was I wanted to make sure that all these aspects of me appeal to one of those three traits. And that's what I did coming up with my list. And I made a video, and we can get into it more from there if you'd like.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So you said you essentially accentuated some things that you get mad at an old person driving in front of you, but it's not like you actually hate like old people, but you could go on a mini tirade about an experience you had with maybe a single old person. Okay. So
and I think the specific story I used was, at the time I was working at a grocery store, and old people consistently complained about having to pay 5 cents for bags. Okay. So
you have to pay 5 cents for bags?
In Canada, in some places, yes, you do.
Really?
So, yeah,
I would get mad about that.
Only the old people would get really mad about that. So that's actually what I used. But
that's a great example of a story that you could like almost describe down to the T of like, hey, they had to pull it. Is there a Canadian nickel? What's on the Canadian nickel?
It's a beaver. I'm not joking. It is a beaver.
All right. So do you still, that's a long shot. Do you still have that list of your initial traits?
It's honestly, I do somewhere in my house. It's probably in my desk somewhere. I kept the book because I actually kept a journal of my casting story and my process and everything throughout from beginning to end.
Yeah.
So it's actually in that same book. So yeah, it is somewhere. I actually don't have it off the top of my head, and I couldn't tell you the entire list, but it was pretty long. I created a pretty decent story. I talked about all three of those categories: how I can fit in the sex category, how I can fit in the conflict category, how can I fit in the other categories, and how I could also relate to it on a game level as well. Like I had talked about my strategy, I talked about past Big Brother players. I wanted to be able to have enough information mapped out for myself, so that way when I did get into an interview type of situation, I would be able to go on a huge rant about it, or I could talk about pretty much anything and I wouldn't get stumped. And that's essentially what happened.
Okay. So you get to a point where you go through this, you have your weird list, and then if you had to like summarize, what was your elevator pitch? What was your character in two or three sentences?
2 or 3 sentences. So off the top of my head, I can't remember it, but it was just like basically, hey, I'm Jordan Parhar. I'm the palest East Indian person on this planet. And I'm a big super fan of Big Brother, and I think it was something along the lines of people who have abortions are stupid because they something like that, which I don't necessarily believe, but I just
talking about rattling some cages.
Yeah, wanted to rattle some cages, so I was just like, yeah, they're idiots, and this is why, and blah blah blah, and it was just like a real quick thing like that, and yeah, that's basically what I used. And right off the bat, when
you rattled me, I'm like, we don't talk about that kind of stuff here, man. Like we're like down the middle of the road. I'm like, I don't want to go there.
Yeah, and that's something that that is not necessarily something that I believe. However, if you really want to get on reality TV in the worst way, you got to be comfortable saying some outlandish things like that. I mean, it depends on who you are. Yeah. I was willing to do that and it helped me in the process.
So what was your Chiron? So when you're on Big Brother Canada, it said Jordan. What was underneath?
Underneath, so yeah, it was Jordan, the conservative is what my Chiron was per se. So,
sounds familiar.
Yes, exactly. It was Dan, very, very familiar. So you, my friend.
What's
Yes.
East Indian? Is that just like a section of Canada, or is that like
yeah? So you know that you're familiar with the country India, Dan.
Yes.
Yes. So my father is Indian. My mother is British and Italian. So my dad is actually a brown guy, and somehow I'm like pale as a ghost. I'm very white. So that was something that was unique about me.
Look at me. I'm like, I didn't like that's really intriguing. Like, yes. I don't know what you don't like. Typically, like stereotypically, you don't look like you're from India, and it's like
exactly right. So that was something that was unique about me from my weird list that I was able to use in my elevator pitch, and I was able to use throughout the casting process, because every single time I went to an interview and I said, "Yeah, I'm East Indian," people would be like, "What? No, you're not. You're white." And I said, "Yeah, no, I know I am. I just I got the bad genes. I'm not quite sure what happened." So, and that was a sort of it goes into the humor thing. It was sort of went into that, and people found it funny, and it really did help me.
That's because I guarantee there's no one else in casting who maybe there was someone from like East India that looked like you, but they probably didn't play it up, like that's really like that tells to you understanding like what is unique about you and then selling it. So all right, so you got your story down. Did you do a video? I'm guessing, or you go to open call?
Yeah, actually. So what happened was I did a video, and so I changed it up this year. So I wore glasses. I had all these notes of my character, and basically what I did was I cut out segments of me driving my car and walking down the street and talking about myself and all of these different things about me. And what actually happened was I didn't get a semifinal callback, but I got an email telling me, "Hey, we liked your video, but we want to see some more of you. Come to this open casting call on this date." And I thought to myself, okay, well, Dan says don't go to an open casting call, but if this is the only way I'm going to get on the show, then so be it. So I went to an open casting call.
That's like the kiss of death, man. When you said it, they told me to come to an open casting call. It's like you showed a flash of something, but they're like, it's not good enough, so we got to see you in person. Yeah. So let's hear about the open casting call and what a cluster. I mean, and this is where I like casting directors get mad at me, but tell me how big of a cluster it was. Or don't tell me how big of a cluster it was. Tell me your experience, unbiased, how open casting call was.
Yeah. And actually, believe it or not, Dan, it was actually really positive for me, this experience. So
that's good to hear.
Yeah, so I got up early. I went to this open casting call. I got there probably, they tell you 6 o'clock in the morning is when you're allowed to line up. I get there at 6:01. Sure enough, 80 people are already in line. So I was like, okay, whatever. So I think I was number 82 in line, and there was all these people around me, and they were just very talkative because the doors didn't open until 8:30, I believe. So we had 2.5 hours of just sitting there doing nothing, and I thought, okay, well, what am I going to do? I brought my headphones, so I actually started listening to some podcasts, whatever, just to zone out, just calm down, whatever. And the people around me, though, they kept constantly talking about themselves and just giving away all this information. So I actually turned my headphones down a little bit so I could kind of hear about the people near me in case I ended up in a group with these exact same people. And one lady actually came up to me and she said, "Oh, you look so nervous. Are you okay?" Because I was really quiet and I wasn't saying anything, but I was just taking in all this information. And I said, "Oh, yeah, like I'm fine. Like I'm a little scared, but I'll be okay." When in my head, I was like, no, I'm going to kill this thing. I'm going to be fine.
This isn't my first rodeo. That's what you're thinking. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that lady actually turned out to be Sarah Miller, who was on season 2 of Big Brother
Was
Canada.
she like the mom? The mom?
Yes, she was the mom. Yes.
Okay.
So she's actually one of my very close friends now, which is it's funny.
That's
how
bizarre.
that worked out. Yeah. She actually lives down the street from me, which is great. But anyway, so she says that, and I was like, okay, whatever. This lady has no idea what she's doing. She doesn't know I'm a shark. I'm ready to just kill all these people. So eventually I get to the front of the line probably around 9 o'clock, and sure enough, I end up in a group with a lot of these same people and that I was standing in line with. So I heard a lot about what these people were all about, including Sarah, who was this mom, and all this stuff. So I thought to myself, okay, I have all this information. I can use this to my advantage as ammo once I go into the actual open casting call interview. So they take us behind this curtain. There's a group of 5 of us. We're in front of one casting producer, and basically how it works is you have 1 minute to just and sometimes not even. You have maybe 30 seconds to be like, okay, dance, monkey, dance, and you just talk about yourself. So for me, again, I pitched I said, yeah, I'm half East Indian, even though, or I'm the palest East Indian person on this planet. And then I also said I want to win the $100,000 because not a lot of girls want to go out with me, and I'm not the most well-endowed individual, so I need this money to convince hot girls to date me. And so everybody was looking at me like, whoa, what is this guy saying? And so the casting producer was like laughing, and he was
like you're the guy. You're the guy. You're the loudest monkey or the most intriguing monkey.
Exactly, yeah. And what would happen is, so I believe I was second, and we went across the line, and as people would talk, I basically would just cut them off and tell them that I would make fun of them somehow, because I had all of this ammo that I was saving up for earlier when I was listening to them talking for those 2.5 hours. So there was this one guy, and he was talking, I think he was talking about baseball, and he was talking about how the Yankees are his favorite team, and he was trying to convince the casting producer that Alex Rodriguez was not a steroid user. It was just something ridiculous like that, and the guy was a little bit overweight, and so I feel really bad in hindsight doing this. And if you ever are listening to this, I'm really sorry. But what happened was I said also in my pitch was, one thing I said was, I don't believe in insults. So if you say something to somebody, it's either true or it's not true, and you have to decide how you want to take that. If it's not true, it shouldn't bother you. Therefore, it shouldn't be an insult because, hey, it's not true. And I said, well, for example, if someone said to me, hey, Jordan, you're not smart. Well, false, you're wrong. That's not really going to bother me. So I mentioned that, and I said, well, but if there is something that is true, for example, if someone was to say to me, hey, Jordan, you're a small, puny little guy, and I could beat you up, I'd say, well, yeah, that's true, and it's not an insult, it's just a fact. You need to decide if that bothers you or not. If it bothers you, then you need to change something about that. You need to start working out, or you need to go to the gym or something like that. If it doesn't bother you, then hey, whatever, you're fine being a puny little guy, and I'm fine with that. Then I pointed at this overweight guy, and I said, look at this guy over here, Tubby. He's very fat. He's very overweight. That's not an insult. I'm telling him the truth. He is a huge fat guy. Now, if it's the truth. There's nothing I can change that. Now, he can decide if he wants to change that or not by losing weight. But if not, if it doesn't bother him, great. It doesn't bother him. He's fat. It's a fact.
This is why you got cast, because that's like a jerk ass thing to say, man. Like, I would be worried I'd get popped for saying he didn't swing at you.
No, and I was very, very scared, Dan, when I said this. So as soon as the interview ended, I also mentioned there was this other guy, I think he was 30 years old, but he was wearing like a tank top and like a shoelace belt and skate shoes and skinny jeans. And I said, how old are you? And he's like, oh, I'm 32. And I said, oh, that's weird, because why are you dressing like you're 16 years old? And then again, the casting producer, the entire time I was just being a jerk and just, frankly, an asshole to all these people, which really is not me. But in order to stand out and to be the best monkey in the group, that's what I did. And sure enough, I got a semi.
We're not endorsing that you make fun of people, because you could get, if this is in the U.S., you may get stomped on.
Yes, and Dan, as soon as the interview left, they're like, okay. He said, thank you very much. We'll let you know at the end of the day if we want to call you back. And what I did was, like that, booked it out of there, ran to my car. No joke, Dan. I legitimately ran because I thought all those people were going to beat me up and kick my ass.
But you're in Canada, so in Canada, I think you can get away with it. In the U.S., I mean,
yeah. So, and also, it's a very, very risky thing to do because, you don't want to run into that, and if you piss off the wrong person, it's just not good. I happened to luck out, and I think the thing with open casting calls and why. Like you, Dan, I agree. Probably not the best way to go is you need a lot of luck to stand out and be the best monkey in your group. Because if you end up in a group with somebody like me who's doing stuff like that, you're out. There's nothing you can do. You had 30 seconds and it's over. You can't edit your video. You can't change what you said at a certain point. And that's why open casting calls are really tough. If you're feeling lucky and you want to try something different, go for it and see what it's like. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because you got to get incredibly lucky to stand out.
No doubt. Okay, so you leave the casting call. What happens next in the timeline for season 2?
So I leave the casting call. I drive home. It's about an hour drive home. I'm probably about like 5 minutes away from my house, and I get a phone call saying, "Hey, Jordan, great job. Congratulations. You're moving on to the next round."
That's pretty darn quick. I mean, were you like, did you see the number and you're like,
I saw the number. I was like, whoa, what is this? And then I answered it, and then they're like, are you alone? And I said, yeah. And I was in my car, and they're like, yeah, Jordan, just so you know, this is Big Brother. We really liked you. We just want to let you know that we want you to come back for the next round. Your interview is going to be, I think it was the next day. It was like really quick because that's how they do in Canada. And they're like, yeah, it's the next day at 2 p.m. at this place, and just show up. And then I was like, okay, wow, sounds good. And I was just trying to like sound like a normal person when I was on the phone. And then I hung up, and then I honked my horn like 4 times, and I was like, yes! I was just so excited and so happy.
Well, that's awesome. Well, this sounds like a great segue here, Jordan, because I think we're definitely over. So if you're cool with it, I'd like to do a second part. But before we do that, tell me about this is perfect. This is a cliffhanger. People are going to get mad at us, but it's perfect. So you get the call, you're like, yes, but tell me more about what's going on now and where people can find you, and because you're involved with Rob Has a Podcast. So you went from a listener of, this podcast, a listener of Rob Has a Podcast, and now you're on both. So what's going on with Rob Has a Podcast?
Yeah, so it's been super thrilling. Rob Sesternino is a great guy. If you like reality television, and surely you do if you're listening to this podcast, he covers Survivor, Big Brother, Amazing Race, all those shows each and every week on robhasawebsite.com. And I myself actually am hosting my own podcast on his website called the Big Brother Happy Hour. So that's every Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And I just talked to old Big Brother U.S. and Canada house guests, just discussing the current season Big Brother 17, which is going on right now. So if you want to check that out, that's great. You can also find me on Twitter. I'm at Jordan Parhar.
Okay, all that will be in the show notes. So what day is your show? Tuesday? What day?
Fridays.
Fridays
at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern.
Cool. And all that information will be in the show notes. Jordan, so we're going to cut the episode here, and we're going to continue your story in next week's episode. But thanks so much for joining, man. It's great to hear someone, like I said, go from zero to success. And sounds like we're about 70% of the way your story. I can't wait for the listeners to hear the rest of your story. But thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Dan. It is such a pleasure, and it's surreal to just be on your show. And after being a huge listener of your show, to finally, actually be on here talking to you, it's just nuts. So thank you so much. The pleasure is mine, my friend.
Dude, it's all mine. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
All right, so I hate to cliffhang you guys, but this is a really long episode. Typically, our episodes are roughly around 10 to 15 minutes long. And instead of cutting off his story there and ending the podcast, I wanted to finish out his story and give him his proper dues. And so that's why there's going to be part 2 of this interview will be coming out next week, next Monday. Special thank you to Jordan for, taking the time to share his story and reveal everything he has about his process and what he learned and his best tips. So that episode will be released next Monday, the conclusion of the interview with Jordan. As a reminder, if you guys haven't had a chance to join the email list, I encourage you guys to do so at howtogetonrealitytv.net/list. On there, you'll find a weekly tip that you won't find here on the podcast. It usually would take things that going on in the podcast one step further. It'll be a little different for this episode because of the interview. But if you want to sign up for that, it's howtogetonrealitytv.net/list. It's completely free, no spam or reno. And I hope you guys enjoyed this special episode because there's one more coming at you next week. But thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you guys next week.